fascinating biblical discoveries have been uncovered.
Have you ever noticed how the Bible boldly names places and events and expects history to back it up?
Some pictures might look simple at first, until you notice the small details in them that tell a crazy story. 20 rare images linked to famous Bible stories do exactly that. Old stones with carved lines, scrolls pulled from caves, and relics people still argue about all raise one question. What truly happened back then? But before we uncover stones that speak louder than legends, what hidden truth do these rare images reveal that scholars never expected? Names in stone, photos of inscriptions linked to people in the Bible. Stones do not speak. However, the letters carved on them record the names of great people we have been hearing about. The Pilate inscription comes from Caesarea Maritima. Archaeologists working there uncovered a block of limestone in 1961.
Well, in 1961, archaeologists uncovered a stone with the name of one of the most infamous figures in history, a man directly connected to the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, Pontius Pilate.
The Latin letters on that block include the name Pontius Pilate and his official title as the leader of Judea. The artifact is now in the Israel Museum in Jerusalem. Photos show the worn letters and the frame around the text. Experts compare the letter shapes with other Latin inscriptions to confirm their meanings and date. At Tel Dan, the basalt fragments present a different story. Excavations led by Avraham Biran brought several broken stones to light in the early 90s. Aramaic letters appear across those pieces. A line of the inscription is widely read as referring to the House of David. Photos kept in museum archives let epigraphers study the handwriting and the phrasing. Those carved lines show that a royal house named for David was known to neighboring kingdoms in the 9th century before the Common Era. The Moabite slab from Diban carries a long first-person account by King Mesha of Moab. Frederick Augustus Klein first reported the monument in 1868. Parts of the stone were smashed, but a paper impression made by Charles Clement Ganneau helped scholars reconstruct missing sections. The Mesha inscription names Omri and Israel and lists building work and battles. The fragments are preserved in the Louvre Museum in Paris. Pictures of the basalt surface show rows of Moabite letters carved in a Phoenician-style script. Readers can follow the lines in museum images. A much older record is the Egyptian slab of Merneptah. Pharaoh Merneptah carved his victory poem in the late 13th century before the Common Era. A line in that poem includes a name that specialists translate as Israel and adds a phrase suggesting defeat. Flinders Petrie and other 19th century archaeologists published pictures and drawings that brought the slab to public notice. The monument now sits in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. Museum images show the hieroglyphic columns and the particular line that mentions Israel. The clay prism associated with King Sennacherib preserves an Assyrian royal account. The object known in many texts as the Taylor prism entered European collections in the early 19th century after acquisition by Colonel Taylor. The hexagonal prism holds lines in Akkadian cuneiform that describe campaigns in the Levant and refer to Hezekiah of Judah. Pictures record the wedge-shaped marks on each face and allow Assyriologists to match the words with passages in Hebrew chronicles. The British Museum and other institutions keep these images for study. These stones and clay records do not tell tales by themselves. The images of them allow scholars to read the letters without moving fragile originals. Museums and academic publishers provide high-quality photos that appear in books and catalogues. Epigraphers examine the language, the form of letters, and the spot where each object first stood to estimate date and meaning. The Pilate block confirms a Roman official whose name appears in Gospel accounts. The Tel Dan inscription points to recognition of a Davidic royal house outside the Hebrew texts. The Mesha slab, the Merneptah poem, and the Sennacherib prism place peoples and rulers on a wider map of the ancient Near East. The dates on these objects span many centuries. The Merneptah inscription comes from about 1200 years before the Common Era. The Mesha slab belongs to the 9th century before the Common Era. Tel Dan dates to the 9th century as well, while the Sennacherib prism records events nearly 700 years before the Common Era. The pilot block belongs to the 1st century of the Common Era. But if stones can confirm kings and battles, what hidden truths emerge when ancient writings themselves return to life through photographs? Texts and scrolls, photos of writings that match biblical books. Old pages and carved texts let people read many stories of what happened long ago. The Great Isaiah Scroll is a dramatic example. In 1947, a Bedouin shepherd named Muhammad Dib discovered jars near Qumran. Inside one jar sat a long parchment that scholars later catalogued as 1Q Isa A. Pictures show dark Hebrew letters in 54 columns across 17 sheets of parchment. The roll measures about 7 meters and contains the whole book of Isaiah. Specialists studied handwriting shapes and used carbon dating to place the manuscript in the 2nd to 1st century before the Common Era. The images capture the cracked leather of the ink and the way the letters run in steady columns. A clay cylinder from Babylon provides a royal voice from another world. Hormuzd Rassam excavated the Cyrus cylinder in 1879, and the British Museum in London preserves the object today. Photographs show neat rows of Akkadian cuneiform wrapped around the curved clay surface. The cylinder records actions of Cyrus the Great, who allowed displaced peoples to return and ordered repair to temples after the fall of Babylon. The small object measures about 22 centimeters long and preserves roughly 45 lines of text. The photographed script lets translators work from the original marks while keeping the fragile object safe. Carved letters sometimes appear where water flows.
This tunnel right here was done by Hezekiah, and what he did, he took 2 teams from 2 sides of the mountain and they started digging.
Hezekiah's tunnel under Jerusalem contains a short Hebrew inscription carved straight into the rock. 2 boys noticed the letters in 1880 while walking through the water passage, and the word moved quickly through the city. The Siloam inscription records how 2 groups of diggers met after tunneling from opposite ends to join the passage and bring water into the city. The characters use an early Hebrew alphabet, and scholars date the carving to the late 8th century before the Common Era. Pictures of the inscription show the letter shapes clearly and allow experts to compare the writing with other inscriptions from the same period. A large stepped pool returned to site near the southern wall of ancient Jerusalem in 2004. Roadwork exposed broad stone steps and walls that belonged to a rectangular basin. Excavators Eli Shukrun and Ronnie Reich opened the site and published photographs that show wide stairways and robust masonry leading down to the waterline. Many scholars link the structure with the Pool of Siloam mentioned in the Gospel of John, where a blind man receives sight. The images display the construction method and the pool layout, so researchers can judge how people entered and used the water. High-quality pictures serve several clear purposes. A detailed image of a fragile scroll allows careful transcription without handling the original. A picture of a clay cylinder preserves each cuneiform wedge for translators. Close images of carved letters fix the exact cut of each character for paleographers who compare shapes across inscriptions. Pool photographs show scale and access, so readers can match a physical place with written accounts. Museums, publishers, and digital archives now make these images widely available for study and online access. The Great Isaiah Scroll rests in the Shrine of the Book at the Israel Museum in Jerusalem. The Siloam inscription original is on display at the Istanbul Archaeology Museum, while a replica sits in Jerusalem. Talks continue over accurate dating, translation choices, and how closely one object may match a written account elsewhere. Those disagreements belong to scholarly work. The photographed scrolls, cylinders, inscriptions, and pools nonetheless provide direct evidence that people in Mesopotamia and the Levant wrote religious texts, royal statements, and public records on parchment, clay, and stone. These images place ancient words on a timeline and give viewers a chance to read the same letters that people carved and wrote many centuries ago. But if images can preserve ancient words so clearly, what happens when a photograph seems to confirm a name that changes everything? Burial boxes and bones, photos that touch names in the New Testament. Burial boxes from ancient Jerusalem carry short inscriptions that point to real people. One ornate limestone box was discovered in December 1990 in a rock-cut tomb in southeastern Jerusalem. Archaeologist Zvi Greenhut of the Israel Antiquities Authority documented the object. The long side shows the family name written as Caiaphas, while a decorated narrow side reads Yosef bar Kappa, which means Joseph son of Caiaphas. Photos show carved letters, a painted border, and floral decoration. The box contained skeletal remains and a record of burial practices used by many families in the 1st century. A single limestone ossuary captured headlines in 2002 when a private owner displayed an inscription reading Yaakov Bar, Yosef Akui di Yeshua. The picture of the box circulated worldwide. The words read in English as James, son of Joseph, brother of Jesus. Collector Oded Golan presented the object for study. The Israel Antiquities Authority questioned part of the inscription and opened an investigation. Laboratories examined the inscription surface. Some reports described unusual calcite layers on parts of the letters, while other specialists argued the marks fit 1st century letter forms. Court proceedings followed, and the criminal charges ended in 2012 without a verdict of forgery. Researchers still disagree about the inscription, while the box remains a focus of public interest. East Talpiot in Jerusalem produced a tomb during construction work in 1980. Archaeologist Joseph Gath recorded a rock tomb that contained 10 ossuaries placed in stone niches. Pictures of the boxes show short inscriptions in Aramaic and Greek. Some of the names read Yeshua bar Yosef, Maria, Yosei, and Mariamne.
This inscription says Yosa with a hey in the end.
Clear as day, it's Josie.
Here's another Maria over here.
But here is another Maria, another Mary, Mariame, just like the one on our ossuary in the Talpiot tomb.
In 2007, a documentary proposed that the group of names formed a family related to Jesus of Nazareth. Many archaeologists and epigraphers responded by noting that those names were common in the period, and that the statistical method used to link them to a single family was disputed. Published excavation reports and museum catalogues preserve the original photographs and the excavation record for later review. How do researchers test inscriptions on ossuaries? Specialists in writing study the shape of each letter and compare it with dated examples from known contexts. Conservation scientists examine the mineral layers that form over the limestone surface over centuries. Microscopes reveal whether calcite coatings wrap around letter edges or whether they sit only inside letter grooves, a detail that helps tell if a cut is ancient or recent. Chemical analysis can detect modern tool marks or foreign substances used to alter a surface. Pictures taken under visible light, ultraviolet light, and high-resolution macro photography capture small features that the naked eye may miss. Why do photos matter? The images create durable records for scholars who cannot visit a museum. High-resolution pictures allow remote experts to study letter forms, tool marks, and surface texture. Museums and research institutes publish clear image plates, so epigraphers can compare scripts from different tombs and time periods. The Caiaphas box remains on display at the Israel Museum in Jerusalem. The James ossuary moved through exhibitions while discussions continued about its inscription. The Talpiot ossuaries are recorded in published journals and archaeological catalogues. These burial boxes do not by themselves settle questions about people named in ancient texts. Photos supply exact spellings, tool evidence, and clear images of how families reused bone boxes after burial. The combination of field information, excavation photos, laboratory reports, and museum records gives scholars the material they need to judge chronology and authenticity. When a name on a stone links with a name in a book, the images allow people to compare the letters directly, to see what the original carved or painted mark actually looks like, and to weigh how close the match might be. But what happens when a photograph doesn't just document history? What happens when it hints at something far more unsettling, waiting to be uncovered? Clothes and relics. Photos of people linked to Jesus' burial. The Shroud of Turin is a long linen cloth that bears a faint body image. Photographer Secondo Pia took the first picture of the cloth in 1898, which revealed a negative effect that surprised many people. Giuseppe Enri produced detailed pictures in 1931 that scholars and conservators still consult. The cloth is kept in the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist in Turin, Italy. Radiocarbon tests on a small sample in 1988 were run at the University of Oxford, the University of Arizona, and the University of Zurich. Researchers have also studied weave patterns, pollen traces, and blood chemistry from small samples taken under controlled conditions. The Sudarium of Oviedo is a smaller blood-stained cloth kept at the Cathedral of San Salvador in Oviedo, Spain. The object appears in church inventories and pilgrim lists from the early medieval era. Photographers recorded the stains closely during public displays, and when conservators examined the cloth under ultraviolet light and microscopes. Some analysts reported blood group AB in samples taken from the surface and described serum traces that match patterns on other ancient linens. Other researchers question whether the cloth's early history connects directly to 1st century Palestine. The Nazareth inscription is a marble slab carved in Greek that orders penalties for people who take bodies from tombs. The slab entered the collection of the Musée du Louvre in Paris in the 19th century, and it is often called the Nazareth Decree. Photos show neat Greek letters cut into the marble surface and allow epigraphers to study letter shape and grammar. Some scholars propose a 1st century Common Era date for the inscription, while others place it later in the Roman period. The slab lacks a clear archaeological provenance, so its original find spot and immediate context remain uncertain. Photographs of these clothes and the slab matter for several reasons. Sharp images preserve weave detail, blood marks, and the exact cut of carved letters that can fade after handling. Infrared, ultraviolet, and macro photography reveal traces invisible to the eye and highlight small particles or stains for later tests. Photographic records let specialists in different countries review the same visual evidence without moving fragile artifacts from their secure storage. Conservation work and public access follow strict rules. The shroud is shown only on rare occasions, and most research relies on photographic archives kept by the Museo della Sindone and by conservation laboratories. The Sudarium is stored under controlled humidity at the Cathedral of San Salvador when not on public view. The Nazareth slab remains catalogued in the Musée du Louvre, with careful image plates available to scholars. Each object has a long public history recorded by images, church lists, museum catalogues, and published reports. Photos create a stable visual record, while experts argue about dating, material analysis, and historical links. Those images do not answer every question, but they preserve the physical evidence so researchers can test claims and compare details as new methods and opinions develop. But if photographs can preserve truth so precisely, what happens when ancient images begin matching stories once thought impossible by design or coincidence? Sites and reliefs. Photos and records that match the stories. The Black Obelisk of Shalmaneser III sits in the British Museum in London. Sir Austin Henry Layard removed it from Nimrud in 1846. Pictures show rows of carved figures and Akkadian captions. One panel shows a bowed ruler labelled in a way many scholars link to Yehu or to a king of the House of Omri. The object records tribute from regions mentioned in Hebrew accounts and places those rulers on a wider map of the ancient Near East. The Lachish reliefs came from the palace of King Sennacherib at Nineveh. 19th century work brought long stone panels to the British Museum. Museum images display siege scenes with soldiers, siege ramps, prisoners, and captive processions. The panels align with passages in the Books of Kings and with Assyrian royal inscriptions that record an attack on Judean cities around 701 BCE. Excavation plates and site photographs allow comparison with the burned occupation layers at Lachish in the Judean foothills. A 1st century fishing boat was revealed on the northwest shore of the Sea of Galilee in 1986.
Right now, we're heading over to Kibbutz Ginosar, where you can actually see a fishing boat that was found at the bottom of the Sea of Galilee from 2,000 years ago. That's like from the 1st century.
Brothers Moshe Lufan and Yuval Lufan noticed timbers when water levels fell. Archaeologists lifted the fragile hull and conserved the wood at Kibbutz Ginosar. Pictures display oak planks fastened with wooden pegs, the rounded frame, and the internal rib pattern. Radiocarbon tests place the vessel close to the 1st century of the Common Era. The preserved hull sits under glass, so visitors can study the original material and construction up close. Al-Maktas, called Bethany Beyond the Jordan, lies on the eastern bank of the Jordan River. Excavation work from 1996 to 2002 revealed stepped pools, chapel foundations, and paved paths used by pilgrims. Photos show dressed stones, baptism basins cut into bedrock, and traces of churches from the Byzantine period. The site earned recognition from the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization because the visible remains document long-standing pilgrimage and ritual activity associated with the figure John the Baptist. On a high plain near Mount Tenderek, a boat-shaped formation appears in aerial photos. Captain Ilhan Durupanar reported the outline in 1959 after flying over slopes near Mount Ararat. Later, aerial and ground images show a long, rounded feature of darker rock and sediment in a shallow depression. Some explorers point to the shape as vessel-like. Most geologists describe the formation as a natural landform produced by local rock layers and erosion. Photographs provide a public record that keeps the discussion alive. Photographs of obelisks, carved panels, ancient hulls, and baptism pools let people examine material evidence without moving fragile objects. Museums and excavation archives in London, Paris, Cairo, and Jerusalem preserve image plates that record inscriptions, carved scenes, vessel form, and building layout. These visual records place objects on maps and timelines. They link royal lists, carved art, everyday craft, and sacred places with the locations named in ancient writings. Which image would you visit first and photograph up close? From carved stones to ancient scrolls, each photograph unlocks a fragment of history once thought lost. These images let us touch names, battles, and relics that shaped the Bible's stories. Whether a tomb, a temple, or a tattered cloth, every detail whispers secrets across millennia. Which of these rare images challenges your understanding of the past the most? Tell us your thoughts in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more.